So good morning, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming. We may have a couple of people, wandering in, which is perfectly okay. As I always tell people, I am recording. So for that parents who can't make it here, this way they have the option to listen later, or you guys can listen later. Just to check in on everybody, it's like your first year in PS 101. Okay, I didn't think so. Okay, so a lot of the things that I would normally go over, I don't necessarily need to go over because you've been here, you know the drill. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what makes fourth grade different, because the reality is this is probably your most pivotal year since kindergarten in school. Actually, the numbers you want to remember are grade 4, grade 7, and grade 11. These are the three big years. I know you're thinking grade 11, that's forever. My daughter's in grade 11. It's insane how quickly it goes. Somebody was just saying, like, I can't believe they were just in kindergarten. Now I'm thinking about middle school. And that's part of the process. We're hitting a stage where your children are now 9, going on 10. Maybe some of them are 8, depending on the time. But ultimately, this is a big turning point for your kids. So let's talk academics, because people always ask, what do I have to know in fourth grade? The real thing to think about is fourth grade and eighth grade. Fourth through eighth grade is like considered its own chunk. So you know how like when you're filling out a survey and it says, are you between 18 and 27 or 28 and 30, like you have these categories. This is the beginning of your new category, of your new year, because the reality is now we really start ramping up education. This is the year that counts for middle school. This is the question I generally get from parents is, what do I have to do to prepare? Is there anything I should be doing now? We as a school are taking care of all of that because we know what this year means. So we increase rigor, we increase the academics, we increase what we're giving to your kids and the demands that we're putting on your children because we know what this year is about. That being said, and just to give you the layout of what's going to happen over the next 2 years, when you come a year from now in fifth grade, middle school applications open. Actually, they just opened yesterday, I think, for our fifth graders. And if you think about it, fifth graders don't have report cards. They haven't had state exams. None of that has happened. So when you're applying to middle schools, they're actually looking at fourth grade. That's why this year is so important. The same holds true for eighth grade. When kids apply for high schools, they look towards seventh grade, and colleges, 12th grade, when they start applying for colleges, they're looking at 11th grade. That's why I said 4, 7, and 11 are your big years. So the first question is, what can you do to prepare your child? And that's the common question I get all the time. And there's not much different that you need to do than you've done any other year. Make sure they're doing their homework. Make sure if they have questions that they're asking. Make sure that they kind of have a sense of what's going on. By now, in most cases, students are reading really well. They understand how to tackle text. They can read text that's beyond their years. So in other words, they could probably pick up a 7th grade, 8th grade, or even 9th grade book and read it. Read it to you. Seems like everything's good. But remember, there's decoding a book, meaning I can read these words, versus understanding the content, the layers of what's involved, right? It's just like your child can see an R-rated movie. That doesn't mean they really understand what's going on there or should be, exposed to that. So something to think about is the literature that your children are getting. But one of the things you really do want to start encouraging as much as possible is reading as much as possible, especially in this day and age when kids are on their phones all the time and playing games and this and that. The more literature you can get to them, the better it is. And if it's on their phone, that's fine too, because it's still reading. But the point is reading. And the other thing to think about is reading what's not familiar. In other words, we as people, good morning, we as people tend to do what we like to do, right? If you're going to go to a bookstore and buy a book or watch a TV show or a movie, you're going to stay in the genre you tend to enjoy. This is a great age to have kids figure out what they enjoy, because they don't know what they enjoy. They only know what they've been exposed to so far. So what you want to do is think about, well, what are some books that might be of interest to them, or even shows that might be of interest to them that are out of their comfort zone? It could be learning about a musician from the past. It could be, if they're very into like action, reading about romance or comedy, like exposing them to different language patterns. because a book is written differently. Like a humorous book is written very differently than a dramatic book. Getting our kids to read this kind of language, understand this kind of tone, will help them ultimately decide who they want to be in life. We're already starting to see, and you probably see it already, your kids are inclined towards your kid may be very serious, or your kid may be very funny, or whatever the case is. You're already seeing that personality emerge. But this is a critical time. It's a time when you can expand and you can actually take control of expanding who they are. Because in the next couple of years, they're going to go through drastic changes, as we already know, through puberty, et cetera. And kids go through puberty at different stages in different ways. As I always tell parents, you'll see a seventh grade class. I taught seventh grade. Some kids will look like they're in third grade. Other kids look like they should be driving cars. It's just that much of a range. And with that comes its own challenges and patterns, insecurities and so forth. But that being said, now's the time to really start showing them as much as possible. Really putting yourself out there to get them to a museum, take them on a trip, talk to them, spend time with them, show them what else is possible, different lifestyles, because they have spent the past, you know, 10 years of their life, basically 9 years of their life with you and your family. But people are different. People culturally, the way people think, that's all different. And books and shows, and I'm saying this, even, Netflix series, whatever else, shows kids options of how they could think, of how they could handle situations. So when I'm asked about what can you do to prepare your child for middle school, that's what you can do. Because also remembering you're now in an elementary school where most likely you're zoned for this school, meaning you live in this general community. We have a mix of people, but middle school will have people from all over Brooklyn. And if you're going to a school like Mark Twain, it could be from all over the city. So you're going to be exposed to so many different types of people, so many different types of cultures. Now is a wonderful opportunity to start showcasing and celebrating that, giving kids exposure. So what can you do to prepare your child for middle school? I had a parent who emailed me and asked, like, what should I start doing to preparing for the tests for next year, if you're going to take the specialty tests, or should I be going to open houses this year? No, not really. You could, there's nothing stopping you from, but things in the Department of Education change year to year in terms of what's the rationale for getting accepted into middle school, what programs exist, et cetera. So we also don't want to get our kids too anxious about this, and that's one of the big challenges. That's something we're putting on our children oftentimes. Our own nervousness, our own worries. We say too much to our kids, and then they start getting nervous and worried, and we don't want that. We want them to be open to what's possible. I was just literally having this conversation with my daughter this morning regarding some of her teachers, and you've all had teachers, some are fantastic and on top of things. She was talking about a teacher who the subject is really dry. She doesn't like the subject, but the teacher's great. So he makes it really interesting. And then there were subjects that she found really interesting and was excited about, but the teachers are so boring, she could barely stay awake in class. So a lot depends on the teacher there. And to that point, middle school, they're going to have so many different teachers. In elementary school, right, they have one teacher for most of the day. They get a smattering of other people, music, gym, this and that. But in middle school, they're going to have 7 different teachers throughout the day. And therefore, they're really going to have to get exposed to different teaching styles, different people, different ways of doing things, which again is why I'm encouraging you at this point to do what you can to expose your children to as much as possible. And remember, we live in New York City. Like going out to the city and taking a trip and spending time downtown versus uptown versus on the east side versus on the west side, completely different environments and feelings. So taking your kids just on a tour and a walking tour, whatever else, is fascinating, is something you can do. But again, to the point, there's not much to do this year in terms of academics because we take care of that. We make sure we're preparing them for their exams. We talk to them about middle school. We make sure they're doing work-wise what they need to do. We just need your help as parents to reinforce the importance of it, right? To make sure they're on top of things, to get them especially, bless you, to get them especially to be able to open up if they don't understand something to ask. My daughter, I don't know if you had this, like, my daughter's very shy. If she didn't understand something, she didn't necessarily raise her hand when she was younger. But that meant she'd come home and go, I don't get this. And then it was my job to kind of teach her. which I'm sure you've experienced as well. So the more you can encourage your child to take a risk, and that's really what it is, because it seems like nothing to go like this and say, I don't understand, but that's risky for a 9-year-old. That's scary, bless you. So therefore, teaching your child to step out of that boundary, giving them opportunities to take risks can be drastically helpful in shaping and forming who they are. So again, for middle school, not much you need to do this year, but knowing that next year at this time, you will already be applying. So this year academically is most important. Another question I get asked oftentimes is about the test, like the state exam, how important is it? It is a piece of the puzzle. It is not 100%. Years ago, if you didn't do well on the state exam, that was it. Now it's just one of many pieces. So putting your importance and focus for your child on the everyday is what's the best thing you can do for them. In other words, gearing up that whole doing your homework every day. I'm tired, I don't want to do it, and then pushing through. Well, I work. I don't necessarily want to go to work. Sometimes I'm tired too, but it has to be done. So teaching them to persevere, that's one of the biggest things that children have challenges with right now, because it's staying the course, staying with something when it's boring, when it's not fun, when you don't want to do it. It's a muscle that has to be developed. I have friends who, they're professors or doctors. I mean, the work they had to do to get to that point was exhausting. And when I've asked all of them, like, well, what makes the difference for you? What made the difference? And that was the one thing they all have said. They stayed the course when they didn't feel like doing it. When they were tired and they didn't want to study anymore, they pushed themselves to do it. At this age, that doesn't mean you sit for another hour. At this age, it just means sitting for another 5 minutes. When your kid says they're done, just say, let's do 5 more minutes. Because 5 more minutes in about 3 or 4 months becomes 10 more minutes, which becomes 15 more minutes. It's building up that muscle to push through and to really get something done. That's the biggest difference between anybody who's successful and people who aren't, is that they pushed themselves. They're not necessarily smarter. They just did the work, right? I mean, and if you think about, well, I don't know if you read about like some of these CEOs of companies or whatever else, again, they don't claim to be that brilliant. We're not talking like, Elon Musk or people like that, but in general, most people just did the work. So the more you can help your child understand, it's okay that we don't like things sometimes, but we have to do a little more, the better it's going to be for their growth. Do you have specific questions about middle school or any of that you'd like to ask me at this point? Because I want to make sure I'm addressing that, because again, when I meet with you next year at this point, that's really going to be our focus.
So the fourth grade exams are the one that counts towards the middle school or the fifth?
Yes.
Fourth, right?
So fourth grade, because they'll have their exams in April, and then you get your results basically in August, generally late August. September or early October, middle school opens, applications open. So yeah, the fourth grade is the one that counts. But again, just a piece of the puzzle, not the entire puzzle. Of course, every little piece that your child does well benefits them, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the fourth grade test is deciding which junior high school you're going to.
It's a part of what decides. I was saying earlier that fourth grade, because right now, yesterday, middle school applications open for the fifth graders. So there's no tests, there's no report cards. They have to look at fourth grade. So your fourth grade is the most important year for middle school. This is the year. Yes.
How big of you said it's only part of it, but how big in the application?
They never really broke it down and said 20% this, 30% this, da da da. See, the whole thing is, just so you know, when you do the middle school application, there's two parts to it. Number one, there's if you're applying for one of the gifted and talented schools. Mark Twain Bay Academy is for our district. Just to talk a little about it, Bay Academy is our zoned gifted school, meaning only District 21 students can go there. Whereas Mark Twain is a citywide program, you can be in Queens or the Bronx and apply for that school. So the competition to get into that school is a lot different than just the local zone. So those schools have a different test, meaning if you're applying for those schools, like let's make believe you're in fifth grade right now. Your child's in fifth grade and you're applying and you put down Mark Twain science, in December-ish, you're going to be called to go on a Saturday and your child's going to be taking a test. People ask, well, how do I prepare for that test? There is no preparation for that test, believe it or not. I mean, like Angel Center and other programs that we have here will do what they can to help, but there's nothing specific because that test changes. Even the math test, for example, for that is really a computer type test. It's not, it's a technology test more than a math test. Or if you're applying for the music program, you know, you're not preparing for violin in the last three minutes. You've either been doing it for the past couple of years or you haven't. So it's really about those pieces. Then there are your schools that you don't have to apply for in terms of a test. Cavallero right across the street is an example of a great school, but that's just our zone school. If you live here and you're zoned for 101, more than likely, you're zoned right there, meaning you don't have to do anything special to get in. You just have to apply. Doesn't mean you will get in, but you'd have to apply. If you're looking to go to Booty, for example, they're very big on their dual language programs and on their music programs. That's a different type of process. You'd go there to audition. So to your point, or whoever just asked, fourth grade exams and your material will get you into the school. The fifth grade determines where in that school you go. So for here, we have classes 401, 402, 403, 404, 405, 406, all the way to 407. That doesn't mean the 1 is the top class and 2 is just behind it. That's not how it works here. In middle school, that is how it works. Meaning that one class, and it's usually 1, 2, and 3 because they have so many kids. It's not like the first 3 classes are the top group, then the next 3 are the middle group, and so forth. So your fifth grade grades are what determine placement. Meaning now they've had their fifth grade test, you get it in August, your child's about to go to middle school, that's when they're positioning their kids in the classes based on your fifth grade. So your fourth grade gets you in the door, your fifth grade positions you to where you're going to be once you are there. Make sense? And that's when we get calls oftentimes like, you know, if there's questions, how is the student in behavior, or what do they do, or what do they excel at? And then we give feedback as well. The teachers do, I do, whatever's needed. Other questions around the middle school process or?
My question is more in terms of, I guess, character and resilience building.
Mhm.
That's probably the most important thing. How do the teachers in the fourth grade really kind of prepare them through that? Because of the fact you're kind of pushing them for at a higher standard and a higher level. And I know my daughter, sometimes she gets a little frustrated, because she's like, Mom, all my friends don't do this and all this other stuff.
Uh-huh.
So like, how are you guys kind of preparing them that like, hey, just because everyone else doesn't do it, doesn't mean you shouldn't do
Right.
it. You should do it.
Fantastic question. Everybody heard her? Okay, so it's really the question is how do you prepare kids? How do we prepare kids to be resilient, to push through? We do that through our lens of Leader in Me. That's why we've adopted that program. If you look at the 7 habits, just to quickly go over this came from a book from Stephen Covey, who wrote it back in the 90s. All he did was interview like 1,000 successful people, find out what did they do that made them successful. He found all of them, they had different habits, but there were 7 habits that were all the same. Every single person had them. So he created this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which his son, Sean Covey, wrote a student version, a children's version. That's the program we brought in because ultimately when we brought this program in, the question was, and still the burning question, how do we prepare our children for an unknown world? You know, with technology, with AI, how do we even prepare for what's to come when so many jobs may be replaced? What does the world look like and so forth? But this concept of leadership, and that doesn't mean leading other people, it means leading your life. It means understanding that you are responsible for everything that happens in your life. Like too often when we see kids, you know, have a scuffle or push each other or get in trouble or something like that, it always begins with he did or she did. It's always the finger pointing first. What we try to encourage them is what was my responsibility in this? What did I say or do that may have led to or helped create this? Because the more we understand we're responsible, the more our kids then turn around and can go, it's up to me to decide how to do this. One of those habits is begin with the end in mind. It's goal setting. It's what do you ultimately want and how do I work backwards to get there? So those pieces are all integrated into our teaching. To your point, saying to a child, well, don't do what everybody else does, or the opposite, just because everybody else is not doing it doesn't mean you have to do it, is something that is subtly integrated. You know, we do say we're constantly messaging, you know, we don't compare ourselves to other, we celebrate differences, whatever the case is. It's not a comparison. Every person is different. They have their own set of strengths and their own set of weaknesses. A philosophy for life that I have is I remember that every single person I meet, I can learn from. Truth is, I know more than every person I meet, and I can learn from every person I meet. And I keep that mentality because I can always learn and benefit from talking to somebody else. Everybody has a different life experience. So these are ways we kind of message this piece of, you know, just because somebody else is doing something or is not doing something doesn't mean you have to. What's your decision-making power? And as people, we do tend to go with the crowd, right? Most people have what's called a crab mentality. That's the term. I don't know if you're familiar with crabs. Crabs tend to stay together. They do whatever they can together. If somebody tries to break out of that group, meaning a crab actually tries to leave, they'll rip its legs off. It's like a real thing. Crabs stay in their community. They will not let crabs leave, come, whatever the case is. And mentally, as humans, we tend to go with the crowd too. So again, to this point is, well, who am I? What do I want? What does my leadership look like? If I'm going to make a decision and say, yes, I'm going to do this, or no, I'm going to do this, what are the consequences of that action? That doesn't mean they're bad consequences, you know, but everything does have its positive and negative. So we do teach that through Leader and Me because ultimately we want to create and foster independence. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Other questions you may have?
So on the fourth grade state exams, what's the highest they can get, like 4?
Mhm.
Or
So it's still a 1, 2, 3, 4. To get a 4 means you're above grade level. 3 is grade level. 3 is where you're supposed to be. But remember, there's 3.0 to 3.9. To get a 4 means basically you've answered no more than 3 questions wrong on that entire test. It's that kind of thing where it's very like, that's why a lot of people don't get 4s because it means you're truly above grade level. And again, you could have a 3.97, like you're almost there. You are 1 question away or 1 point away from that 4. But we're looking.
Sorry for the interruption to all of our second grade and fifth grade families that came out today to visit PS 101 during our lesson. Thank you so very much. We hope you had a wonderful time in the classroom. We do ask that you bid your farewells at this time, and we're going to follow our Veterans on Response Team.
Remind me, did 4th grade go yet? You have your open school? No. I can't remember who's on which set.
Tuesday.
Saturday. Didn't make it.
Have a great day and kindly exit through the main lobby. Thank you so much.
So to this point, yeah, a 4 is, you know, it's attainable depending on your child. There's also a very different set of skills, and I tell parents this every year when it comes to test taking, because for some reason we act differently under tests. Like it's like when you go for an interview and you get nervous. When you get nervous, it changes how you think. Literally, chemically will change how you think, and therefore you'll look, you know, later on, you're like, why didn't I say that? Or you forgot something you so knew you wanted to say. When we get nervous, it interferes with our ability to perform. So as you talk to your child about state exams, try your best to remind them it's just another exam like any other exam you've taken. Because we tell them, relax, you don't have to worry. But who listens to that? You know, like we all worry, you know? So it's really your attitude about it that's going to determine how your children feel. Again, my daughter, when she took state exams, I really tried not to even talk about it. I didn't even bring it up. I knew when her exam was, but I would be like, when is your exam again? Like trying to make it more cavalier, more relaxed. And she did as well as she could. And that's fine. You know, she had a fine path. I have no problems. She did not, just so you know, she wasn't fantastic in elementary school. High school, she's at the top of her game. We all develop in our own time. And the things that we say to our kids and the advice that we give them, a lot of times we may not see them act on it at this age, doesn't mean they're not listening. When I had asked her a couple of years ago, it was last year, I said, well, what's going on? Not in a bad way, but like, you're like literally have a 99 average in high school. You never got anything like a 90 in elementary or middle. What's the difference? And she said it was too much of a struggle. She'd find herself too nervous back then. She didn't want to do it. And so she didn't. But now she'd rather put in the effort and not be nervous and not be uncomfortable. That was the way she thought. She learned that basically if I just do the work, I don't have to worry as much as I used to, which made her feel better. So we never know how it's going to kind of map out for our children. So don't freak out about what you're seeing if your child is not performing the way you want. I mean, think how many people on a daily basis ask you about your fourth grade experience, right? Nobody's talking about it. Nobody even asked you about elementary or middle or high school, but it's all going in. The point is to give them a love for learning as much as possible. Yes, we want them to do their best, but we have to look at, is this amount of pressure we're putting on them too much? Is it helping them or hurting them? And that's different for every child. Like when our teachers position your children for the next teacher the following year, one of the things we think about is, does this child need a teacher who's like right on top of them, or one who's really like kind and soft with them? Different people react differently to different things. And some parents will say, make it hard, give them a hard teacher, give them a tough teacher. But that may not be what's best for the kid, because if somebody's coming at them too hard or too tough, they shrink, they get nervous, they don't respond. Other kids thrive on it. They love the pressure, they love the challenge. So it's knowing your child, but your child right now has some predispositions, but they're at the stage where you can mold that. And the more, and this is just my advice, the more you can give them ownership, more you can give them responsibility, the more it puts them in a position to become more confident. Because if you're telling them what to do, they don't learn to think for themselves. If you're doing everything for them, they don't learn responsibility. It's that part of, especially now when they're 9, 10, 11 years old, of saying, you figure it out. You know what to do. Come on, you've seen me do this a million times. What do you think you should do? Asking them questions, letting them make mistakes. And when they do make mistakes, saying that's fine. So you learned what not to do. What do you try now? The more we can do that, the more it's going to create independence for them to think. And trust me, in my own experience, this was trial and error. I had to figure it out as I was going as well, because there's no real manual for parenting. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what every day is going to bring. But your next couple of years, your kid's going to, I mean, how many of you, this is your oldest child? So how many of you, so you have like an older sibling? Okay. So for those of you going through this for the first time and you kind of know this, but I'm telling you again, the next few years are going to be a little wonky, for lack of better words. Your children are going to start acting different, talking to you different, showcasing behaviors that you don't necessarily agree with or like. Remember, this is part of their development. And I'm sure I've shared this before, but I'll share it again. When we're going through changes, they're going through chemical changes. They can get a wave of like a feeling. They don't know what to do with it. They've not experienced it. Most adults don't know what to do with their emotions when they get emotional. Children are learning it for the first time. They have to figure it out. The more you can be patient with them and loving and just letting them know you're their safe space, the better it's going to be for their development. Because if you push against them, they're going to automatically push back. This is why teens and parents tend to clash. Parent is pushing. I mean, think about it. If somebody pushes against you, you don't just fall back. Your initial reaction is automatically push back against. That's how this works. If you push against your kids are going to naturally push back, which means that you're going to have a break in your relationship. And ultimately, it's that balance. You can't just let them do whatever they want, meaning there has to be some boundaries, but you may want to question what are those boundaries, because the boundaries for a 9 or 10-year-old should be different than they were for a 6-year-old. And too many parents continue to parent in the same way. We want to evolve our parenting. It's actually a great, this is how I viewed it. It's a great opportunity as an adult to grow into becoming more of a patient person, more of a loving person, more of a non-judgmental person, because our kids are our everything, right? So the more we use them as our tool to become better people, better adults, and managing ourselves better, the more they're going to learn, that's the way you do it. More tolerance, more loving, more patience. Again, pressure in the right amount of time. There's a certain time to do it, and there's a time not to do it. So over the next couple of years, your children may get a little more moody or testy. They may want to spend more time in their room. I use the analogy of a caterpillar going into a cocoon. It's a dark space. It's not comfortable. It's cramped, but all well and good. Naturally, they come out as a butterfly. You can create that environment. Another little story about that, that for me was very helpful is there was a story of a gardener who basically, was gardening every day. And then one day he noticed a little cocoon on the tree branch. So he watched it every day. And then one day he saw a head popping out of the cocoon. And he's like, okay, the butterfly's about to come out. Next day he looks and he sees not much has changed. And the third day he sees not much has changed. So he thinks, I'm going to help. So he takes a little scissor and he gently cuts a little of the cocoon, just a little, so that the butterfly could step out. Next day, sure enough, butterfly is on the branch. Out. And he's happy and he sees this. But then the day after, he sees the butterfly still sitting on the branch. Day after, butterfly is there. Next day, butterfly is dead. Why do I tell you this? Because the process is that caterpillar, that butterfly had to struggle to get out of the cocoon. That act of breaking the cocoon is what's developing the wings, the muscles to fly. He interfered. He thought he was helping, but his interference actually hurt the process of development. And that's what we often do to our kids. We think we're helping them, but in the end, we're not letting them develop the muscle to make mistakes, to get it wrong. And it pains us to see our kids fall, not literally, but like figuratively, to fall, to make mistakes, to be upset. But that's the growing process. When they fall, they learn to get up. And each time they fall, they learn to get up quicker. So the more you can kind of stay back and allow that process to happen, the stronger your child's going to be. It's going to be uncomfortable now, but you're going to be so much happier later as a result of it.
This one is a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm just gonna,
Please.
kind of talk through it. So I remember when I was in fourth grade, we got the puberty talk with the school. And my parents, obviously, and then or my parents were different, so they got the letter, signed it off, and didn't talk to me about it before.
Mm.
And then I get to school and get this talk. So my question is that a very, like, is it similar here where you guys have the puberty talk in fourth grade? And if so, do we get a letter? And then, because I've already kind of started having conversations with her around it, but it's just more of, I don't want her to come to school and that's like in her face.
Got it.
So like, how can I prep her for that?
So first thing to know is we actually don't really talk about it.
Oh, okay.
We don't talk about it much. We do reference that kids go through changes, which they know, but we don't spend much time talking about it. The one curriculum we do go through is the HIV and AIDS curriculum, which is really just a bloodborne pathogen curriculum. In other words, blood carries diseases, don't touch blood, things of that nature. That's all it is at the elementary school level. We don't talk sex, we don't talk any of that stuff. But puberty, to your point, is one of the most important discussions to have with your child. And I talk about this all the time because I remember this when I was in school. There was a situation where we were sitting in the cafeteria, still could see it like clear as day, like, you have those memories. And this girl all of a sudden had red all over her pants. And of course, on that day, she's wearing white pants. And it's like, everybody's just like, what's going on? And she had no clue, and it was sad. And we see that every year. We have a child because your period, you don't know exactly when it's going to start, but basically there are kids who get it as early as third grade. Not typical, but it happens, especially in fourth grade. Fifth grade, we'll see a lot more of it. If you're not having this conversation with your child, especially if you have a daughter, obviously, or even your son, because your son should know what's going on, you're really hurting your child in a sense, because they should know this is coming. Now, that doesn't mean that the first time first time my daughter had her period, she was freaked out about it, but she knew what it was. It wasn't a mystery. Generally, when we bleed, it means something's wrong. But when you have your period, that's not the case. So it's important that girls know what's going to happen. And I often tell parents in fourth and fifth grade, you should basically have a Ziploc with a change of some pads and a change of underwear. Just leave it at the bottom of the book bag. Explain what it is, but have that talk. And again, it doesn't just have to be the mom having that talk. It could be the dad having that talk. Even though some people think that's weird, think about it. If a dad is having that talk, it actually seems more natural, meaning the fact that it's like, yeah, everybody knows about this. It's not a big deal. So doesn't matter which parent, but that talk is really important. And your kids have questions. They know a lot more than you probably know they know. But as I say, oftentimes, if you're not explaining it to them, if you're not answering their questions, they're getting their answers from their friends or the internet. That's not really where you want the answers to come from. because you want to explain, or at least I think you'd want to explain these changes in your way. What makes sense to you, how to take care of yourself, what to do, what to keep private, what to showcase, etc. So the more you can have the conversations around puberty, I would just lay it out. Yes, appropriate, but again, they're 9, 10, they're going through it. And if they're not going through it, they're seeing a friend go through it. I always remember because my daughter I talk about my daughter a lot, obviously, because that's my experience, but she got her period in 4th grade. That's when she first got it. And I remember when she was saying that other girls were talking about getting their period or whatever else, and the reality is she had already had it. So it was like that alone was a weird conversation because she was like, well, I know what this is. These people don't, you know? So to the point is, and I did have this conversation, I'm having this conversation with you, doesn't mean you broadcast it to all your friends, right? This is something, it's part of growing up. It's part of being mature. And just as a fun side note, if you've never seen the YouTube video, and you may want to write this down, about a first moon party.
Oh, I heard of that.
Uh-huh. So that, like, it's basically a girl faking that she has her period for the first time because all her friends do. She tells her mom she does. Her mom's like, this is not true. So she throws her a first moon party basically to embarrass her. It was a whole situation, but it was hysterical. It's a hysterical video if you haven't seen it. But I had showed that to my daughter at the time because it kind of just lightened everything. It made it humorous. It made it fun. So to my point, as you have these conversations with your child about growing up, about the changes you're going to have, about what you're going to see in yourself, even just the fact of you may or may not develop the way other people do. Some people, you may start noticing changes and you may look at yourself at 12, 13 and you still look young compared to some of the people in your school. It's okay to have these conversations. They should know everybody blooms in their own time. It's just what it is. But again, the more you can front load these conversations and have these conversations, number one, your child feels safe. Number two, you're showcasing them, I'm here for you. If you have questions, come to me. I will always be honest with you. I will tell you what you need to know. And that will stay with them forever. Again, to the point, my daughter's 16, she still comes to me with heavy conversations because it's a safe space. Same with her mom. She knows she'll get real answers. And then she'll, of course, do her research and look up on the internet, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But she does come to us with tense situations. How do I handle this? And honestly, that's, at least in my view as a parent, what we want. We want that relationship even as they get into adulthood, because you'll always have all that history and knowledge and wisdom over them. And the more you can guide them, not direct them, but give them possibilities, what you could do. And again, turning it to them. Well, what do you think you would do? Like if your friend all of a sudden got her period in the middle of class and you noticed it, how would you handle it? Just situational questions. But to the point, this is one of the biggest pieces of academics are important, but at this stage of life, it's really preparing them for middle school and adulthood. That's essential. Other questions that you have? Okay, so I'm going to hang around, but if you do have any other questions, feel free to ask. But otherwise, I want to thank you for coming. If something pops into your head later, you're like, oh, I forgot to ask about this, just email me. No problem. I'll always get back to you. Okay? Thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it.